Welcome to Storytelling. This week's guest is someone who believes sustainable growth isn't built on ambition alone. It's built through the leadership systems and habits that help people and organisations scale. He helps organisations and individuals strengthen leadership capability, build better habits, and create the systems needed to turn growth into consistent delivery. His belief is that growth is not a personality trait. It's a set of practices, clear priorities, repeatable routines, honest feedback loops, and a culture that turns learning into action. He works in a space where strategy often breaks down, helping people and organisations translate intention into execution through stronger leadership, better decisions, and effective operating habits. Because when those foundations are in place, people don't just perform, they compound. Please welcome Patrick Oluyide. Hello, Patrick, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Debbie, and thank you for having me.
Patrick, we live in a culture that often rewards visibility, image, and personal branding. How do you reconcile that with your argument that real leadership is about formation rather than performance?
That's a rather insightful question. A good way to look at this is to say there's nothing wrong with visibility, nothing wrong with image, nothing wrong with personal branding. What I would like to add is how do we make our visibility, image, and personal branding lasting? And in that case, it has to be value-driven if it's going to be enduring. If it's going to go beyond just showing up on a post on social media or being featured in a magazine once, then it means that somewhere behind the stage, somewhere behind the scene, we have to be busy with the formation that at the end of the day reveals the results that you see out there. I usually will say that success is actually not revealed by the moment. It is revealed by the system. So the type of systems that the individual has been able to build, it's what matters the most here. So if your visibility, if your image, if your personal branding is rooted on a solid system, why not? In that case, it will be enduring. So there's nothing wrong with having all of that, but as long as it is rooted in a solid system, and that would not be performance driven, it will be built on formation.
So tell us more about the systems and the formation that you have just mentioned, because when someone spends years building an image, but maybe neglect their character, what eventually happens and what systems should they be thinking about?
I've always been fascinated by systems, individual systems. In fact, I see the individual as an infrastructure. Also, systems that organizations ride on, and at the same time, even countries. We could say that individuals or organizations should build systems, but either we like it or not, systems do exist. The question we need to ask is, who is responsible for your system? Who built your system and who owns your system? Don't get me wrong, either we like it or yes, we grew up in a system. Our family had a system. The society has its own system. the community, the country as a system. That's why you move from the country to another one and you see that the outlook of the people, the way they look at things is totally different. But the most important thing to do as an individual is to interrogate and ask yourself, the system that I'm running on now, am I aware of them or am I unaware of them? And how can I create my own system, my own infrastructure that is fit for purpose and the type of life I want to live? I've always seen an individual like a factory. If you look at a factory, the type of results a factory delivers, it's a function of the system that factory has created on its own. So we need to see ourselves as a system. Let me give you a typical example to close this. The way I manage my time and my life, for me, I see time as life broken into pieces. So the way I approach time is really like I approach life. And I've built a system that makes me optimize the way I use my time. When I schedule something and I automate it, it gets done. Now that's a system. That's a system that even impacts every other thing in my life. So I schedule the way I relate with my family members. For instance, today in the evening, I have got a time with my boys. It's on my calendar. If something is on your calendar and you're committed to it, then it is very, very important. So that's an example of a system that you build to help you achieve a particular result. So if you're just out there for visibility, but you don't have a solid system that you own and you're responsible for, most likely that won't be enduring and it won't last.
You advise boards and CEOs. Can you tell the difference between someone who has built a reputation and someone who has built substance? What's the difference and what are the signs?
That's a lot very interesting to answer, and maybe not a question that you get an immediate answer to. Why? Because individuals do vary. But I believe that if you look closer to individuals by the fruits that of the result that is coming out of what they're doing, you begin to see and how sustainable those results are. So, for instance, what you're shipping out of your line, your credibility, your empathy, the way you relate with other people. For instance, you lead a team. There's the style and approach in which you do that. It goes a long way to tell about the type of system that produces the result that you're getting. I mean, you can't plant corn and expect to get pineapple. You can't plant mango and expect to get orange. So the outcome, the output, the results that they're putting out there, it's a good way to explain the type of system that they've built or that they've developed over time. I know of a manager in one of the experiences I've had in one of my sessions back in time, who was sharing a story of him taking over a branch. It was actually a bank, taking over a branch. And that branch was named the worst branch in that bank. And in that worst branch, there is the member of staff that is known as the worst in that branch. So that should be the worst overall. But he said when he got to that place, it decided that he was not going to just look at what has been written about all of it, the staff member, but he was going to decided to start working with that individual, give him a chance, mentor, or was guiding him. It was so instructive that what turned the fortune of that branch in the positive direction came from the worst member of the branch, which should be the worst member of the bank. For a leader to be able to focus on a team member and support them, believe in their potential, and help move them to the next level, that is coming from the type of system an individual has built. That person has the ability to mentor, ability to coach, ability to listen to other people, to be able to see what they have in them. Their value has actually moved beyond themselves, outward. So it's not just enough to be good to yourself, but now you've gotten to a point where you're adding value to other people. So yes, it comes down to the results. By their fruit, they say you shall know them.
I love the metaphor that you used. Can't plant pineapple to expect a mango. And the example you gave was just perfect. Is there something that you've had to change in your own factory because your results exposed a weakness you couldn't ignore?
You have to, and that's how it works in a factory, actually. You have to constantly do routine check and routine maintenance. So I go back to sometimes in the past, not just one thing. I've changed so many things about my own system. One that is very prominent was that today, executive coaching were well over 6,000 hours, the time I've spent with executives. And besides the, coaching, mentoring, and supporting other people. One critical factor that is necessary to be successful in coaching is your ability to truly listen to other people. Not just listen to them, but also even listen to them with empathy. Now, would you be surprised if I said to you that about a decade ago, if not more, I wasn't a good listener? Decided that coaching, supporting people through mentoring and coaching, it's so key and essential for leadership. How do I work with my team? How do I listen to my family members and so on? So I began to build these skills. That's a change in my own system. I developed a system to hold my own tongue, to as much as possible be the last to speak. I also discovered that not speaking does not mean that you don't have what to say. So I became a better listener, and I'm still a work in progress. So you see, it was a huge transformation from the one who wants to talk first to the one who now listens and sometimes even does not talk at the end of the day. That's a change in my system. And it is not just a change, but our constant readiness to be constructively discontented with the situation where we are. It's not like anything is completely wrong with it, but we just believe we could make it better. The systems that thrive in the world, both individually and organizationally, they are systems that are constantly being improved, constantly being checked, constantly being raised to the next level. So what is the next level for my system as it is now? And what is the next level for the system in the organization where I work now?
So you identified in yourself the need to be a better listener. And as you mentioned, you didn't want to be the person who jumped in first with something to say and then listened afterwards. So if leadership begins with self-leadership, and your self-leadership was understanding that you needed to listen more, what's the hardest truth that people have to accept about themselves before they can genuinely lead others?
The hardest truth I believe we have to accept about ourselves is that we can't give what we don't have. And that the world is so interesting that positions could arrive even before you're ready as an individual to hold those positions. Self-leadership precedes public leadership. Oftentimes, the failure that we see out there in leadership actually began with the decay and neglect in self-leadership. So the hardest truth is that we have to constantly, continually work on ourselves, lead ourselves. I believe that the longest journey, the road less traveled, is the journey inward. And that's why working on that internal system, that inward system that makes consistency and performance possible out there is the most important thing. And that's the hardest truth that we probably need to face. How solid is my internal system? Do I have a true north, a sense of direction? What does the input that is coming into my system look like? Do I travel a single path? Is my system maintained? And you can continue with that, because you can ship out value that you have not been able to culture and put together in the first place. So the hardest truth is that.
What have you learned about human nature from watching leaders go through crisis?
We have the ability to bounce back.
Mm.
We have the capacity to transform our situation. We have the ability to move from the worst of all situations even to the best of all. I believe that it begins with the way we see the world. Mindset, that's good, but also building a system to deliver the kind of results that we want. So human nature, it's so intriguing. As long as we decide to solve the problems and build systems around them, we will deliver the type of results that we're looking for. And so we're yet to even meet ourselves. There's so much of potential. There's so much of capability. There's so much that we can do. There's so much that we can make the world look like. But it rests on our readiness to go in that direction, and then our ability to build systems to deliver that.
So Patrick, write in your book, what truth challenged you personally the most?
That's a very powerful one. You know, when I finished writing that book, I decided that I was going to start reading the book, because it's got activities, tools at the end of every chapter, which you really need to go and implement. Like we said, it's not a book about performance, it's a book about formation. So you need to be ready to do the work. So I decided that every morning when I wake up, I would read a piece of the book and implement some of the activities that we have there, even though I was the one that put them together, and some of those things I have been implementing them. And I've been challenged by so many of the decisions that I have made. You know, I told you just recently about how I had to put in time to spend with my boys. We live in the same house, but I suddenly discovered, after going through one of those activities, that these boys need even a little bit more time from me than I'm spending with them. And the reason why they're not getting it is because they don't have enough space on my calendar. So I created those opportunities, you know, and I remember the first time when I said to them that, oh, today we're spending time together, and what do you want us to do? Is it all right? You know, what do you want us to do? So it's not about, oh, come and do your homework and all of those things. I say, okay, we've got these 2 hours together. What do you want us to do with it? So now they come up with proposals. And interestingly, it has helped my relationship with them. So for me, it is not just one challenging truth. There are several, but what is underlining it is that book is not meant for other people. It is meant for me, because and that's why if you see in the author's note, I wrote there that this is written by somebody who is on the road, still traveling, correcting, adjusting, and also working on himself. You know, so I've been challenged to constantly look at my life and transform it, work on my own system so that I can deliver the type of output that I'm looking forward to. And I hope to continue with this type of journey as one of the travelers working on that path.
So you said you were challenged looking at your own life. What would your younger self find the hardest to accept from this book?
My younger self might find it quite difficult to understand the way system is being perceived now. I mean, because, you know, I grew up in a society, I don't know about you, but I grew up in a society where success is defined by the societal standard. The society has created the system of what success means and how it should be perceived. What I have done with myself over the years is that I have defined my own way of looking at success. You know, so success for me actually means freedom. And freedom is powered by systems. So we go back to the conversation we had about system, who owns your system, who is creating your system, and so on. So my younger self would have found it very difficult to relate with the concept of success, freedom, system. But now, the self you are looking at now, it's very, very comfortable with it. I am not just comfortable with it as an individual. I have been comfortable with it supporting leaders, supporting business leaders and executives. I've been comfortable with it trying to help or constantly helping organizations to see what lies beneath performance, to bridge the gap between strategy and execution. The strategy, execution, alignment, which is a challenge that quite a number of, not quite a number, but many organizations do have, but they may not be aware of it. Yeah, so I'm sure my younger self will be very amazed at what this self looks like now.
So we spoke about organizations and your younger self, but going back to the individual, if someone's life is not producing the results they want, what is the first machine inside a factory they should inspect?
It a lot depends on where they are. But the very first one I would pay attention to is finding your destination, your true north. Where sincerely are you going? Set your true north. That's really very, very important. They usually will say that when the purpose of something is not known, abuse is inevitable. It was Seneca, that very wise man. in the past who said that to a man that is bound to no port, no wind is favorable. Systems are built to purpose. When you go into a factory, you see how raw materials come in and then they get shaped and then they get to a point where they become products. But that itself is not even the destination. That is not the product. That's not the end. The end is when those products get used and they bring value to other people. So what's the destination for you? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 years from now, what would you say the goal or the aim is? I believe that and now what you're doing is that you're creating the blueprint. And with that blueprint, it becomes a lot easier to design and put your own factory together. So it's not about speed. It's a lot about destination. Where are you going? Build your factory to suit your destination. So I would say that's a very good place to begin from.
Patrick, very wise words and food for thought. Thank you so much for sharing your system with us, and thank you for being a guest on this podcast.
Thank you very much, Debbie. It's really been a pleasure sharing this time with you.
If you would like further details about Patrick, then please follow links in the show notes.